When a grateful Apache woman offered me something extraordinary in return for saving her life, I never saw it coming. Curious about what happened next? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me take you through this incredible journey. Here we go. The relentless Arizona heat bore down mercilessly, draining every bit of moisture from the landscape. Fine particles of sand danced through the air on gentle gusts, bringing with them the aroma of parched mesquite and sun-baked soil. My trading business at the tiny frontier station had just wrapped up, saddlebags now heavy with provisions, when my attention was drawn to something strange in the distance. Initially, I assumed the shimmering heat was playing tricks on my vision. Then I watched the shape collapse onto the ground. Riding my horse nearer, disbelief washed over me as I discovered a woman battered, injured, barely hanging on to consciousness, crumpled. Near my mount's feet, she appeared as if she'd traversed through hell itself to arrive here. Sand-matted dark locks stuck to her perspiration-drenched skin. What had once been an exquisitely crafted garment now hung in shreds, stained and ravaged, suggesting she'd battled through brambles and adversaries to survive. Parched, split lips, and hollowed eyes still flickered with an unyielding will to live. Carefully. Shh. I scooped her up. She weighed almost nothing and settled her onto my saddle. No resistance came from her. Her eyelids simply dropped shut, surrendering what remained of her strength to my care. I knew of a small natural spring just past the nearby hill. Spurring my horse forward, we kicked up clouds of dust as we raced across the barren terrain. When we finally arrived, consciousness was slipping away from her. Crouching at her side, I grabbed my water container and brought it to her mouth. Initially, uncertainty flickered in her gaze, but dehydration overpowered caution. She gulped desperately, liquid running down her jawline. After a coughing fit subsided, I noticed the slightest hint of vitality creeping back into her complexion. Yet even in this delicate state, something untamed and defensive radiated from her as her breathing steadied. Shh. She murmured in fragmented English, her tone hushed yet pressing. Each word seemed to drain her remaining energy. She explained that she'd fled from pursuers who sought to eliminate her. The story came in pieces, but I gathered she'd been running for countless days without nourishment or water. The wasteland showed no mercy, yet she'd chosen to brave it rather than surrender to her enemies. I remained quiet, absorbing her tale, recognizing that her suffering ran far deeper than she could articulate right then. At that moment, nothing mattered beyond keeping her alive. After wrapping a blanket around her from my pack, I assisted her back onto my horse. Our journey to my home was silent, except for the creaking saddle and steady hoofbeats on hardened ground. Occasionally, I felt her forehead lean gently against me, her respiration faint but consistent. This stranger was entrusting me with her survival, and I felt the profound responsibility of that gift weighing on my conscience. Water alone wouldn't save her. She required sanctuary. My dwelling was humble rough timber, nestled among boulders and scattered mesquite. Nothing fancy, but sufficient protection from the desert's harshness. I brought her inside and positioned her on my cot, layering another blanket over her. Throughout the next several days, I did everything possible to nurse her back to health. I made simple broths, kept water nearby, and dressed her injuries with my meager medical supplies. She remained mostly silent, occasionally uttering a word or two in English, while her eyes tracked my every movement, constantly evaluating and probing. There were instances when I'd notice her studying me intensely, or look penetrating and analytical. It seemed she was determining whether my compassion was authentic or if I'd eventually exploit her vulnerability, like others had. I never demanded information about her history or the threats she'd escaped. I understood that disclosure would come when she felt ready. Instead, I concentrated on modest acts of care, placing meals within reach, providing warmth, ensuring she felt protected. Gradually, tension left her posture, and her breathing became more peaceful. During the hushed evenings, while the desert outside continued its usual chaos, windstorms screaming, coyotes howling distantly inside my cabin, existed a delicate tranquility. On the third sunset, as crimson and amber painted the sky, I discovered her upright for the first time. She'd pulled the blanket across her frame, hair cascading in gentle curves around her features. When our eyes connected, her demeanor had transformed. The wariness had diminished, replaced by something more profound, perhaps unvoiced appreciation, possibly even astonishment. She maintained eye contact longer this time, and I sensed the significance of her wordless communication that evening. As desert winds moaned through gaps in the wooden walls, I occupied myself near the flames, whittling wood to pass time. She positioned herself beside me, nearer than before. For the first time, she extended her hand and rested it purposefully over mine. Her touch radiated warmth and certainty. Startled, I turned toward her and encountered eyes gleaming with unprecedented intensity. Her lips quivered slightly before she spoke, her voice mixing fragility with determination. "You showed me mercy when everyone else abandoned me. I wish to offer you something far greater in exchange." Her statement lingered in the space between us, laden with implication. Though I didn't yet comprehend her intention, I recognized this wasn't spoken carelessly. This transcended mere thankfulness. It was a vow, potentially even a connection between two souls who'd collided beneath the brutal Arizona sun. Whatever her meaning, sensed the coming days would contain more than simple survival. Something was shifting, something unforeseen and profound. Initiated the instant I'd stopped to assist that woman, collapsed alone in the sand. Her words left me thunderstruck. My thoughts scrambled to process what she'd just proposed. Matrimony wasn't something I'd been pursuing, not in this desolate expanse, where merely staying alive felt like constant labor. Yet her manner resolute, steady made obvious this was no offhand idea. This was a statement of faith, of dignity, something vastly deeper than simple appreciation. Firelight danced across her features, revealing both her conviction and the fragility she concealed carefully behind her declaration. In that instant, I wanted to respond, but found myself without words. What should I say? Accepting meant stepping into unfamiliar territory, connecting to cultures that frequently regarded each other with mistrust. Declining might offend her, and worse, undermine the relationship we'd started building. My pulse quickened. I could only bob my head slightly, allowing the silence to express my conflicted feelings. She appeared to grasp this, and without pushing further, simply gave me a look conveying, "Be patient. You'll understand." The following days passed peacefully after that conversation. The woman, now regaining vitality, moved with renewed intention. She contributed to minor chores around my home, collecting water, repairing fabric, cooking when I came back from caring for my horse, or inspecting snares. Everything she undertook carried quiet grace. She communicated sparingly, yet her expressions revealed everything, and occasionally, when our gazes intersected, I felt she was still assessing me not as her rescuer, but as the man who might eventually become part of her daughter's destiny, keeping her promise. 7 days later she returned, but not by herself. Accompanying her was a young woman, statuesque and elegant, her dark tresses flowing freely in the arid breeze. She possessed the same fierce essence I'd witnessed in her mother, yet her countenance softened with a tender kindness that immediately struck me. After dismounting, her mother introduced us with evident pride. The young woman inclined her head courteously, her eyes briefly meeting mine before drifting elsewhere, immature yet confident. I observed her thoughtfully, experiencing an unusual blend of wonder and apprehension. She wasn't some delicate creature requiring protection. She stood firmly grounded in her own power, like the desert mesquite that endures through infernos and droughts. Her palms showed evidence of labor, her build slender but solid, her manner serene yet alert. She was someone capable of withstanding this land's challenges, someone who could walk alongside a man as an equal. Right then, I realized her mother hadn't been overstating things when she'd said, "Ideal for you." The three of us ate a modest dinner that night. Communication was sparse, facilitated through movements and soft interactions. The daughter primarily spoke her native language, with her mother interpreting as necessary. I felt like a visitor in my own dwelling, caught between foreign words and customs, but rather than awkwardness, I experienced profound reverence. They were inviting me into their world, presenting me with something holy. I could perceive the gravity of their offer. This wasn't orchestrated for practicality or benefit. It emerged from honor, thankfulness, an acknowledgement of kindred spirits. As darkness deepened, I found myself stepping outside, gazing at the infinite sky scattered with celestial lights. My heart felt turbulent, though not from anxiety. The concept of marriage had never previously occupied my thoughts. Yet here it presented itself, as vivid as the moonbeams above me, a connection between two individuals, two lineages, two cultures. The desert, typically a realm of isolation, now extended the prospect of partnership, of creating something enduring. For the first time in years, I felt not merely existing, but summoned towards something transcending my solitary life. During the subsequent days, the young woman and her mother came frequently. She and I started communicating in fragments, my clumsy attempts at her tongue, her hesitant English constructing a delicate but expanding rapport. We chuckled at errors, exchanged tales and partially comprehended phrases, and labored together quietly when language proved inadequate. With each passing day, I perceived her more completely. Not solely her fortitude and devotion, but the radiance that illuminated her smile, the forbearance in her character, the tenderness she showed toward even the smallest matters. I started grasping what her mother had recognized in me. Why she'd uttered those words with such conviction? This wasn't simply about gratitude. This concerned equilibrium. I'd preserved her life. In return, she was presenting me with a life worth embracing, one brimming with significance and common purpose. When I regarded her daughter, I no longer perceived just the stranger brought to my threshold. I envisioned the potential for family, for a future anchored in mutual respect, constructed upon the meeting of two worlds beneath the expansive American heavens. One evening, as the desert wind murmured outside again, her mother joined my hand with her daughter's. No utterances were exchanged. None were required. The connection was unmistakable. The commitment already established. I gazed into the young woman's eyes, and for the first time she held my gaze. Instead of looking away, she smiled, gentle yet unwavering. And in that smile, I discovered the resolution to the uncertainty. I'd been carrying what had started as a straightforward act of compassion in the wasteland, had guided me here to a love unexpressed, a respect unbreakable, and a fresh beginning neither of us had anticipated.